The air shimmered with an otherworldly luminescence, a kaleidoscope of colors that seemed to breathe and pulse like living entities. The chamber stretched impossibly high, its crystalline walls refracting light into prismatic patterns that danced across the floor in ever-changing mosaics. At the heart of this alien sanctuary stood the throne, not carved from stone or metal but grown organically from some sentient material that responded to the emotions of those nearby, shifting hues from deep indigo to fiery crimson. She appeared amidst this surreal landscape, her presence commanding yet ethereal. Her form defied human comprehension, skin that glimmered like liquid starlight, eyes that held galaxies within their depths, and hair that floated around her head in defiance of gravity, each strand trailing miniature comets. Her gown flowed around her like captured auroras, constantly shifting between states of matter, sometimes solid, sometimes vapor, always beautiful. The courtiers surrounding her moved with fluid grace, their forms equally impossible to categorize as purely physical beings. They maintained a respectful distance from their queen, their bodies creating harmonious patterns that seemed to follow some cosmic choreography. The atmosphere crackled with energy, not just from the room itself but from the anticipation building among the gathered assembly. When she spoke, her voice resonated through the chamber in multiple octaves simultaneously, carrying both the wisdom of eons and the curiosity of youth. "Bring him forward," she commanded, her words forming crystalline structures in the air before dissolving into motes of light. The courtiers parted, revealing a figure at odds with a fantastical setting, a human man, his simple clothing and familiar features making him appear almost painfully ordinary against the backdrop of alien splendor. He stood there, blinking in confusion, his weathered face marked by lines of hardship and determination. His calloused hands twitched at his sides, betraying his nervousness despite the resolve in his stance. The contrast between him and his surroundings couldn't have been more stark, a creature of earth and gravity standing amidst beings who seemed to embody the very essence of the cosmos. As he looked up at the alien queen, something shifted in the air. The crystals embedded in the walls began to hum in a new frequency, responding to some unseen connection between these two vastly different beings. The queen's expression transformed from regal detachment to something far more complex, a mixture of recognition, disbelief, and perhaps even vulnerability. Her gaze locked onto him with an intensity that made the entire court hold its collective breath. "Impossible," she whispered, though her voice still filled the chamber. She rose from her throne in one fluid motion, her movements creating ripples in the fabric of reality itself. The assembled court watched in stunned silence as she approached the human, each step generating small shockwaves that distorted space around her. The man took an involuntary step back, his eyes widening as he processed what was happening. "You," she said, pointing a finger that left trails of stardust in its wake. You cannot be." Her voice broke, an unprecedented display of emotion that sent waves of consternation through the court. The human's face remained a mask of confusion, but beneath it, something stirred, a flicker of recognition that quickly transformed into denial. "I think there's been a mistake," he began, his voice steady despite the surreal circumstances. "I've never been here before, I don't know." "Liar!" The word exploded from her lips, sending actual shockwaves through the chamber. The crystals screamed in response, their light pulsing erratically. "You dare deny what stands before us? The bond we shared? The empires we built together?" She circled him now, her movements predatory yet tinged with something that might have been longing. The human raised his hands in a gesture of peace, though his body language betrayed mounting tension. "Look, Your Majesty, or whatever I should call you, I'm just a simple guy from Earth. I fix machines for a living, I've got a cat named Whiskers, and my biggest adventure was getting lost in Toronto once. If I'd been married to someone like you, I think I'd remember it." The Queen stopped her circuit, standing so close that the human could feel the heat radiating from her presence. Her eyes bored into his, searching for something beyond his words. "Your memories have been taken from you," she declared, though uncertainty crept into her voice. "They must have used temporal manipulation, erased our past to prevent." "To prevent what?" the human interrupted, his patience fraying. "Listen, lady, I appreciate the drama and all, but I think you've got the wrong guy. Maybe I look like this ex-husband of yours, but trust me, I'm nobody special." The court erupted in whispers, their alien voices creating harmonies that sounded like wind chimes caught in a storm. The Queen silenced them with a wave of her hand, her attention never leaving the human. "No," she said finally, her voice softer but no less certain. "The resonance between us is unmistakable. Even if your memories are gone, your soul recognizes mine. We were bound not just in marriage, but in purpose, in destiny." The human's jaw tightened. He had faced plenty of strange situations in his life, but nothing compared to this. "Look, I don't know what kind of cosmic soap opera you're running here, but I've got responsibilities back home. People who depend on me. Machines to fix. Cats to feed." Her expression darkened, shadows playing across her features like solar flares. "You think you can walk away from this? From me? From what we once were?" She reached out, her fingers brushing against his cheek. The contact sent sparks flying, visible manifestations of their incompatible energies meeting. The human stumbled back, shaking his head violently. "Don't touch me," he snapped, surprising even himself with the vehemence in his voice. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not part of it. You want your ex-husband? Fine. Go find him. But leave me out of your galactic melodrama." The queen recoiled as if struck, her radiant form dimming noticeably. For the first time, genuine hurt showed in her cosmic eyes. "You truly do not remember," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "They have stolen everything from you, your past, your identity, our future." She straightened, regaining some of her regal bearing. "Very well. If you will not accept the truth willingly, then I shall make you remember. Bring forth the Mnemosyne crystal." Panic surged through the human as several courtiers hurried to comply with her command. "Wait a minute. You can't just mess with my mind without my consent." The queen's laugh echoed through the chamber, bitter and cold. "Consent? When the fate of galaxies hangs in the balance. When our union once prevented universal collapse. Your consent is irrelevant. You will remember, whether you wish to or not." The Mnemosyne crystal materialized in the air between them, pulsing with a light that seemed to contain all possible colors and none at all. Its surface rippled like liquid mercury, reflecting scenes that couldn't possibly exist. Planets where oceans flowed upward, stars that sang in perfect harmony, civilizations that bloomed and faded in the span of a heartbeat. "No." The human backed away, but found himself surrounded by courtiers whose forms had become more solid, more menacing. "You can't do this. This is insane." "On the contrary," the queen said, her voice taking on a clinical edge. "This is necessary. Without your memories, without our connection restored, the delicate balance we maintained will collapse. Worlds will perish. Dimensions will unravel. And it will be on your conscience, human, whether you believe in our shared past or not." The crystal's light intensified, reaching toward the man like grasping tendrils. He felt its pull, an irresistible force that seemed to reach into his very soul. Images began flashing before his eyes, glimpses of impossible places, faces that triggered deep-seated emotions he couldn't explain. A silver city floating among the stars. A battlefield where weapons fired beams of pure geometry. Himself, standing beside the queen, their forms intertwined with strands of light that connected them to the cosmos itself. These aren't my memories," he gasped, clutching his head as the visions grew stronger. "They can't be real." "They are as real as the blood in your veins," the queen countered, her voice softening as she watched him struggle. "Perhaps not in this timeline, perhaps not in this version of yourself. But they are true nonetheless. Feel them, human. Let them show you who you really are." The human sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the torrent of alien experiences flooding his consciousness. He saw himself mastering technologies that defied physics, negotiating treaties between species that shouldn't logically exist, wielding powers that made God seem mortal. And through it all, the queen was there, sometimes as partner, sometimes as adversary, always as something more than either. "You see now?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Her voice carried both triumph and sorrow. "You understand why I cannot let you go?" He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. The memories weren't fully integrated yet, but they pressed against his mind like waves against a dam. I remember fragments. Pieces. But they don't fit with who I am now. With what I've built. That is because you are incomplete, she said gently, helping him to his feet. A shadow of your former self, trapped in a single dimension of existence. Together, we can restore you. We can reclaim what was lost. But at what cost? He whispered, looking at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. If I embrace these memories, what happens to the life I've built? To the people who know me as I am now? The Queen hesitated, her perfect features marred by genuine conflict. That is the choice you must make. Between who you were and who you are. Between duty to the cosmos and loyalty to your current existence. There is no easy path forward, only necessary ones. The human staggered back, putting distance between them again. You talk about choices, but you've already decided. You're going to force these memories on me whether I want them or not. Her expression hardened. Do not misunderstand me, human. I offer you the truth of yourself. But if you refuse it, know this, the consequences will be catastrophic. Without our union, without your memories restored, the safeguards we put in place will fail. Realms will collide. Timelines will fracture. Entire civilizations will cease to exist. And whose fault would that be? He shot back, surprising himself with his own courage. You're the one threatening to erase who I am now. You're the one forcing this confrontation. The Queen's hands clenched into fists, her cosmic aura flaring dangerously. You dare challenge me? After everything I've shown you. I'm challenging the person who thinks she has the right to determine my fate, he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. Maybe I was someone important in your past. Maybe we saved galaxies together. But that doesn't give you the right to decide who I should be now. For a moment, the entire court held its breath. The Queen stared at him, her galaxy-spanning eyes unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a sound that started as a chuckle and grew into something that shook the very foundations of the palace. You argue like him, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Exactly like him. Even without your memories, your spirit remains unchanged. She stepped closer, her form glowing with renewed intensity. Very well, human. I will not force the crystal upon you. But know this, time is running out. Already, I can feel the fractures beginning. The barriers we erected are failing. So what do you want from me? He demanded, his voice cracking under the weight of impossible decisions. What exactly do you expect me to do? The Queen's expression softened, becoming almost tender. I want you to remember who you truly are. Not through force, but through choice. Will you stand by while countless worlds face destruction? Or will you embrace your destiny, whatever the personal cost? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications neither of them fully understood. Outside the crystalline palace, stars began to wink out of existence, one by one. In the corridors of the celestial palace, the human found himself walking alone, though he knew dozens of alien eyes tracked his every movement through hidden observation points. The grandeur that had initially overwhelmed him now felt oppressive, each crystalline surface reflecting fragments of lives he couldn't reconcile with his own memories. His footsteps echoed strangely, as if the very architecture of the place responded to his internal conflict. Turning a corner, he nearly collided with a being that seemed composed entirely of shifting geometric patterns. The entity regarded him with multifaceted eyes that sparkled with ancient wisdom. You seek answers, it stated rather than asked, its voice a chorus of mathematical harmonies. I seek sanity, the human replied, leaning against the wall. Everything here feels wrong. Like I'm dreaming someone else's dream. The Queen believes you are essential, the geometric being continued, ignoring his comment. But few understand why she holds such conviction. Fewer still know what happened during the Great Convergence. The what? The human pushed himself upright, suddenly alert. The event that fractured your consciousness. Another voice joined the conversation. A figure emerged from the shadows, humanoid in shape but with skin that flowed like liquid mercury. We were there when it happened. When the timelines collapsed and the dimensional barriers shattered. The geometric being nodded its many-faced head. Before the convergence, you and the Queen weren't merely partners. You were anchors, living embodiments of stability across multiple dimensions. Your bond wasn't just emotional. It was structural, maintaining the integrity of reality itself. The human's knees threatened to buckle. That sounds impossible. Yet true, the mercury-skinned alien confirmed. The convergence tore you apart, scattering pieces of your consciousness across countless realities. The man you believe yourself to be, the simple mechanic from Earth, is but one fragment. The Queen managed to preserve her own continuity, but at great cost. She's been searching for your scattered selves ever since. Memories, or perhaps possibilities, began to surface in his mind. Visions of himself standing at the center of a cosmic web, threads of light connecting him to infinite versions of reality. The Queen beside him, their joined hands creating patterns that kept chaos at bay. "If what you're saying is true," he whispered, "then why does restoring my memories threaten my current existence?" "Because identity is fragile," the geometric being explained. "Your Earth self exists within specific parameters of reality. Introducing memories from outside those boundaries risks destabilizing your current form. The Queen understands this risk but believes the greater danger lies in leaving you fragmented." The mercury-skinned alien moved closer, its liquid form rippling with concern. "There's more. During the convergence, something escaped. Something ancient and hungry. It feeds on instability, on broken connections between dimensions. That's what's causing the fractures now. Without your complete consciousness, without the anchor you and the Queen once provided, it will consume everything." A chill ran down the human's spine. "And you're telling me this because—" "Because the Queen cannot," the geometric being admitted. "Her position demands she maintain appearances, even among her closest advisors. But some of us remember what you sacrificed during the convergence. How you chose to shatter yourself rather than risk universal collapse." Images flooded his mind, not memories exactly, but echoes of decision-making processes that transcended linear thought. Choices made in milliseconds that affected eternity. Sacrifices that bent the very nature of causality. "I did this," he breathed. "I caused all this." "You saved everything," the mercury-skinned alien corrected. "At least temporarily. But the solution was never meant to be permanent. The Queen has held things together as long as she could, but now the strain is becoming too great." The human slid down the wall, sitting heavily on the crystalline floor. "Why now? What's changed?" "The escaped entity has grown stronger," the geometric being revealed. "It's learned to manipulate the fractures, using them to project false memories, create decoys. Several times, the Queen thought she'd found you, only to discover imposters planted by the entity. Each failure weakens the barriers further." "And you're sure I'm the real deal?" he asked, gesturing at himself. Both aliens exchanged a glance that carried centuries of understanding. "The resonance between you and the Queen is unmistakable," the mercury-skinned one finally said. "Even damaged, even fragmented, your presence affects reality in ways that confirm your identity. The entity cannot fake that level of fundamental connection." The human buried his face in his hands, trying to process information that defied every law of physics he'd ever known. "So what happens if I agree to restore my memories? If I become whatever it is I'm supposed to be?" "The immediate future becomes uncertain," the geometric being admitted. "Your Earth self might cease to exist. Or it might integrate with your higher consciousness. Either way, the person you've been will fundamentally change." "And if I refuse?" The mercury-skinned alien's form rippled with sorrow. "The fractures will widen. Dimensions will begin to bleed into each other. Your world, your cat, your machines. They'll be the first casualties as reality unravels from the weakest points outward." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken knowledge. The human looked at his hands, remembering the feel of tools in his grip, the satisfaction of fixing something broken. Remembering whiskers curling up on his lap after a long day's work. Remembering the simple pleasure of existing within clear, understandable boundaries. "What about the Queen?" he asked finally. What happens to her if I choose wrong? The two aliens exchanged another glance, this one filled with something akin to pity. She endures, the geometric being said carefully. But each failure costs her. Costs us all. The burden of maintaining cosmic stability falls heavier on her shoulders with each passing cycle. The mercury-skinned alien knelt beside him, its liquid form pooling around his feet like quicksilver. She loves you, it said simply. Beyond duty, beyond necessity. That's why she fights so hard to find you. Why she risks everything to restore you. Love. The word hit him like a physical blow. In all his interactions with the Queen, he'd interpreted her actions as those of a desperate ruler clinging to power. But now he saw something else in her insistence, in her anger, in her moments of vulnerability. A depth of feeling that transcended mere responsibility. Standing abruptly, he looked down the corridor toward the throne room. Does she know you're telling me this? She knows we speak, the geometric being answered. But not what we say. Some truths must be discovered independently, even by queens. The mercury-skinned alien rose, its form flowing back into humanoid shape. Time grows short. The entity approaches. Soon, choices will be forced upon you regardless of your readiness. As they watched him, the human realized something fundamental. The decision he faced wasn't just about saving worlds or preserving his identity. It was about trust. Trusting that the person he might become would honor the life he'd built, while also embracing the greater responsibility that called to him. Trusting that the Queen's feelings ran deeper than obligation, that their connection was worth the risk of transformation. And trusting that somewhere within himself, he already knew what needed to be done. The throne room had transformed since his departure. The crystalline walls now pulsed with warning lights, their usual rainbow spectrum reduced to angry reds and ominous blacks. The Queen stood at the center, her form surrounded by swirling vortexes of energy that distorted space around her. Courtiers rushed about in controlled chaos, their usually graceful movements now sharp and urgent. "You've felt it," she said without turning, her voice carrying the weight of impending disaster. "The fractures are accelerating." The human approached cautiously, noting how the very air seemed to resist his movement, as if reality itself strained against his presence. "They showed me," he admitted. "Told me about the convergence, about what we did." She whirled to face him, her galaxy-spanning eyes blazing with hope and fear. "Then you understand why we must act quickly. Why your memories must be restored." "Not so fast," he countered, holding up a hand. "I need to know something first. Something real." He stepped closer, until only inches separated them. "Did you love me? The real me, not just the idea of who I was." Her cosmic form flickered, momentarily losing its perfect symmetry. "How can you ask that?" she whispered, her voice breaking across multiple dimensions. "After everything." "I need to hear it," he insisted, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Not as a queen speaking to her subject. Not as a cosmic entity addressing a potential ally. As a woman speaking to a man. The court froze, every alien eye fixed on their sovereign as she struggled with emotions that threatened to overwhelm her composure. Finally, she sank to her knees before him, a gesture that sent shockwaves through the assembled beings. "More than existence itself," she confessed, her voice raw with vulnerability. "More than duty or destiny or cosmic necessity. I loved you, love you, with a passion that defies dimensions, that transcends time and space and logic." The admission created ripples in reality itself, causing the very fabric of the throne room to shudder. Courtiers gasped, some collapsing under the weight of witnessing such profound emotion from their normally stoic ruler. The human reached out, touching her shoulder tentatively, feeling the surge of energy that passed between them. "If I do this," he said softly, "if I let you restore my memories, what happens to us? To who we are now?" Her hand covered his, their combined touch creating cascading auroras that painted the chamber in dancing lights. "I cannot promise anything," she admitted. "Reality itself is unstable. Our restored bond might strengthen the barriers, or it might accelerate their collapse. But I can promise this, whatever happens, we will face it together. The conviction in her voice, the absolute certainty of her commitment, struck something deep within him. Memories, or perhaps just possibilities, surfaced unbidden. Shared laughter that created new stars, arguments that birthed entire galaxies, moments of perfect understanding that resonated across infinity. Each recollection brought pain and clarity in equal measure. "We need to try," he said finally, his voice firm despite the turmoil within. "But not here. Not like this." He gestured at the courtiers, at the formal setting that seemed suddenly inappropriate for what needed to happen. "This needs to be real. Between us. No ceremony, no audience." Understanding dawned in her eyes, accompanied by a warmth that made the surrounding crystals sing in harmonic approval. "Very well," she agreed, rising gracefully. "Follow me." She led him through hidden passages, away from the grandeur of the public spaces, into chambers that felt more intimate, more personal. Here, the architecture responded differently to their presence, creating cozy alcoves and comfortable seating arrangements that seemed almost human in scale. The Mnemosyne crystal followed them, hovering in the air like a curious animal, its light now gentle rather than demanding. The queen turned to face him, her regal bearing replaced by something more vulnerable, more approachable. "Last chance," she offered, giving him the opportunity to withdraw. Instead, he stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Let's do this," he said, taking her hand. Their combined grip created a sphere of light that enveloped them both, cutting them off from everything else. Within this private universe, they faced each other as equals, as individuals stripped of titles and responsibilities. As the crystal's light began to merge with their joined hands, the human felt something shift fundamentally within him. Not just memories returning, but understanding dawning, of who he had been, who he was now, and who they might become together. The queen's eyes widened as she experienced the same phenomenon, their connection growing stronger with each passing moment. Outside their private sphere, reality began to respond. The fractures in the dimensional barriers slowed their spread, some even beginning to seal themselves. Stars that had winked out of existence began to reignite, their light carrying messages of hope across the cosmos. The entity that had escaped during the convergence stirred uneasily, sensing the restoration of order it had sought to disrupt. Within their bubble of light, neither noticed these changes. They were too focused on each other, on rebuilding the bridge between their souls that had been shattered by forces beyond their control. Piece by piece, memory by memory, they reconnected, their individual identities merging into something greater than either had been alone. When the process finally completed, they emerged changed but whole. The human no longer felt like a fragment of himself, nor did the queen carry the weight of sole responsibility for cosmic stability. Together, they embodied something new, something that combined his practical experience with her cosmic perspective, creating a partnership that promised to reshape reality itself. But their journey was far from over. The entity that had escaped during the convergence still lurked in the shadows between dimensions, its hunger for chaos undiminished. The repaired barriers held for now, but they both knew that true stability required more than just restored memories and rekindled bonds. It required action, decisive, potentially dangerous action that would test their newly forged unity to its limits. The queen looked at her restored partner, seeing both the man she had loved and the being he had become. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice carrying both strength and tenderness. He returned her gaze, feeling the weight of infinite possibilities pressing against his consciousness. "Together," he said simply. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Their hands remained joined as they stepped back into the main chamber, where the court waited with bated breath. The Mnemosyne crystal settled above them, its light now steady and bright, casting patterns that spoke of restored balance and renewed purpose. The courtiers watched in awe, sensing the fundamental change that had occurred, understanding that their rulers had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. But beyond the palace walls, in the dark spaces between dimensions, something ancient and malevolent observed these developments with growing interest. The game was changing, and it would not remain a passive player in the unfolding drama. The true test of their restored bond was yet to come, and the stakes had just become infinitely higher. The entity's presence surged violently, shaking the palace to its core. The queen and the human turned as one, their combined energy forming a barrier that pulsed with blinding light. "It knows," she whispered, gripping his hand tighter. "Then let it come," he replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Together, they stepped forward, their restored bond radiating power that silenced the trembling court. The Mnemosyne crystal flared above them, aligning itself with their unified will. In the void beyond, the entity hesitated, sensing something it hadn't faced before, a love and purpose stronger than entropy itself. But it was only the beginning. As the first tendril of darkness pierced the chamber, their resolve hardened. Side by side, they stood ready, no longer two beings but one force against the unraveling of existence.
And